So I'll throw it open for questions and conclusions, right? Yes?
Awesome. You said that there should be, well, let me backtrack. I think that the constitutional provision establishing the euro is terrible, and the euro doesn't deserve to live. But you make the point that the treaties should be default. Well, they should be renegotiated, but that nobody should leave the euro. Now, the pressure to renegotiate can only come, it seems to me, out of the threat, at least, a very credible threat to leave the euro. And of course, there's the position of Germany, chiefly, to contend with. I don't really see, and I would love to see how you see the treaty being renegotiated, but nobody actually intended to leave the euro.
I'll take a few questions and comments. By the way, if you're not on our mailing list, please do sign up. Yeah.
Well, first, congratulations. I think the three presentations are very complementary. If the rest of the contributions in the book are as good as these ones,
Much better.
I just want to get the book. Now, first thing, I agree with what Alvin said about the points of the transitional program. But I think revolutionaries, we should further advance. This is sort of the defensive aspects of our struggle. And I think it's very complementary. I think the next point in a transitional program is the nationalization of key industries as a core part of any revolutionary program. In Latin America, we've had a lot of experiences in the last years, but mainly this year. The Argentinian expropriation of Repsol, and this week, the expropriation of a Spanish also electrical company in Bolivia. In Venezuela, the cement industry from Cemex, and I think also the steel industry. There are key sectors for any type of reindustrialization program. So I think that's a core point that we should be addressing people. Because nationalization should be viewed as a first step towards socialization. Because it's not only nationalization, but workers' control of these key strategic sectors. With the arguments set, employment, social needs, ecological sustainability are very, very important. I have a hypothesis. This crisis, there's been a lot of discussion of what's the content of this crisis. Over-accumulation crisis, etc., financial crisis. In my opinion, this crisis has turned out to be a crisis of productive accumulation. There's a lack of productive investment, except some of the peripheries. And this is very important, and it's a very good argument for the renationalization of key industries. The problem is not banks in themselves, it's not only banks, because financialization has spread all over. All capitalist firms are financialized. As it said, profitability is recovering in all sectors, but that's not bringing investment, because what we have is a dead-end lock. One side is financialization and profitability, and the other side is unemployment, sub-employment, over-exploitation, under-consumption. And this can go on for many decades, I think. So that's the key point. Last point that should also be included in any internationalist agenda is we have to fight against the criminalization of social protest and social movements. We're seeing really dangerous things happening, for example, in Spain. There's a criminalization. Now it's illegal to protest in front of a public sector building. You can get in jail if you do that. And the rightist government of Spain is working through emergency laws. Emergency laws that were used by Mussolini, by Hitler. And that's happening all over. So that's one thing. It's not only the economics, it's also social, human, political rights that we have to put it in the center of any agenda. Thank you.
Rowan?
Yeah. Well, the three speakers have given a very graphic account of the fundamental, interconnected and global nature of the crisis and some elements of the fight back. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to add to that. Osman produced a list of 4 transitional demands, or transitional points that we should be raising. I think there's a couple of elements that need to be added to that or integrated into that. One of them Sean touched on, which is the transformation of the arms industry, because it's now nearly 40 years since the Lucas Aerospace plan for the closing down of the aerospace defence industry and the use of those skills and resources for producing socially useful products. I think we need to revisit that. Basically what we need now is a new Lucas Aerospace plan for how those skills, those resources can be used. Another element that none of you touched on that I think we need to be including in our demands is for a reduction in the working week with no loss of pay. I think when we're talking about the possibility of more and more people losing the jobs, one way to do it is redistribution of work. And in France, we've seen they've abolished now the 35-hour week. They've gone back to whatever it was, 43-hour week or whatever. Well, I think we really need to be talking about significant reduction in the working week, 30 hours maximum with no loss of pay. The other point that I wanted to raise was Sean spoke on transport, restructuring of transport, the need for movement to transport based on electricity rather than oil and on public transport. There's another element that's crucial here, which is the element of planning, because we have a whole economy that is based on movement. We have the whole way in which spatially we've designed our society and our cities is through ring roads and ease of movement and private transport and out-of-town shopping centres and people not living, working, enjoying themselves, enjoying their leisure in the same place. I think that crucial to any transport policy is planning for a low carbon economy in terms of spatial planning as well as in terms of energy planning.
Does anybody else want to come in before I ask those three to make some comments? Terry?
Yeah, a number of diverse things really. I mean, in terms of what Sean was talking about deriving some of the ideas for his chapter from the Million Climate Jobs campaign, I just wanted to add another announcement to something that Fred left in, which is that the Million Climate Jobs campaign is about to launch a climate caravan around Britain, leaving from London on May the 12th and ending up back in, and also leaving from Edinburgh at the same time, because we're having 2 legs, and then ending up back in Manchester and London on May the 25th. And I think that the work that's being done around that by campaigners in the localities and by the campaign nationally will be an important opportunity to discuss some of the things that Sean raised in more detail, and I've got some leaflets which I'll hand out in a bit, and I'd urge people to get involved. I wanted to come back to what the comrade to my right said about criminalisation of protest, because I think it links into what Susan was talking about the ideological context of what's going on. And the sort of contradictions of the political situation that we're in, because it seems to me if we look at what's happening politically across the globe, we've seen with the exception of what's happened with the Arab Spring, but in Europe and North America, the revolts that we've seen have mainly been outside the traditional organisations of the working class. They've been upsurges of young people through the Indignados and through the Occupy movements. And the ideological attack, it's not just the criminalisation itself, it's also, these are other. These are portrayed by the media and by the ruling elite as criminal, non-people, that ordinary working people, even if they've been driven into the ground by austerity, should have nothing to do with it. It seems to me only in Greece have I really seen that being broken and the power of the movement being more united in terms of Europe. So I think that the ideological attack of criminalising communities is incredibly important for the movement to take up, and it's something that I think we need to give more emphasis to, and you know we see it at all sorts of levels.
Yeah, this is completely irrelevant, but I saw it this morning and I thought it was brilliant. There have been big demonstrations in Montreal in Quebec over the last few days, and there was this line of cops standing here in their riot gear, and over here there was a line of anarchists, and the anarchists had fishing poles with donuts on the end. The caption of the picture was fishing for pigs. Anyway, that's by the by. It's a little cheerful anecdotes. Yeah, but I mean, this is sort of moving on to what Terry was talking about. So we've got an election in London tomorrow, and the choice is very, very straightforward. It's between somebody who used to be a fairly radical-ish social democrat and a multi-millionaire Eton boy, sidekick of Cameron. And it looks like Boris Johnson is going to win tomorrow. I would love to be wrong, and it's generally better to be pessimistic, but what this tells you, though, is that the ideological battle has been won hands down by the ruling class. I mean, as a way of comparison, in the issue of socialist resistance, which was sent to the printer last night, we have a report on a climate caravan in Bangladesh late last year, which was an altogether much more impressive affair than the two vans, I think it is, that are going to be travelling around England and Scotland and Wales. There, every night they were speaking to meetings of 500, a couple of thousand people. And yeah, this is where I think getting the politics of the thing right becomes terribly important, because we've just had an election in France which was very sharply polarised. The big winner in that wasn't, as we all thought, it was going to be Mélenchon. The big winner in that was very obviously Marine Le Pen, who looks set to become the dominant force in French politics on the right in the next few years. And everybody's saying, and you saw a bit of this at her demonstration in Paris yesterday, the answers that she is given to sections of the French working class are much more attractive than some of those that Mélenchon and the comrades in the new anti-capitalist party were given. A more severe example of this is Greece, where the Greek left is given a masterclass in how to mess up a situation in which you could become hegemonic in a period of intense capitalist crisis. Now, I think that suggests a couple of lessons for us in the British state as well about how we approach these things, because what we've seen in terms of the left response to the crisis over the last couple of years has been the most pitiful sort of routinism. And if nothing else comes out of the aftermath, what I think is going to be quite a significant defeat for progressive forces in Britain tomorrow is a reassessment of what are our answers to this crisis. How do we make them a great deal less marginal than they are now? Because the climate caravan, its politics are very, very mainstream. You know, it's just turbocharged Keynesianism, and yet it's utterly marginal in the trade union movement. It's utterly marginal as a voice in British society. And yeah, just to conclude, even in the most militant unions, the ones which have taken most sustained action in defence of very basic working class privileges, like a decent pension, the level of strike activity has been very haphazard, and it has been pushing water uphill, you know, to get one strike after another. Yeah. So ideology is important, and so is getting the politics right.
Toby?
Yeah, I was sort of set off by what Liam has just said, in the sense that the pension strike, which, or strikes, has a completely fragmentary nature and everything. Even the left trade union bureaucracy have failed us appallingly on this. This is the basic thing. People should fight for their own members, and they should fight quickly. And so, okay, I'm glad the PCS are coming out on May the 10th, but why the hell didn't they come out on the 28th of March? I mean, I found that I've talked to some people, including members of the Socialist Party who were involved in the PCS around that time, and they came up with those ludicrous excuses, in my opinion. You know, these are the basic demands of the class, and if the broad left kind of thing doesn't work, we need rank and file organisations. We need something to push the unions to fight with. I mean, I accept the unions are the basic defence organisation of the class, but the bureaucracy have completely been bloody hopeless over this pension thing. We have been clobbered, and moreover, if you look at the National Health Service, I mean, there should have been a national demonstration. In fact, there should be strikes, legal or illegal, in defence of the NHS, because this is the worst thing that they've ever done to us, take our NHS from us, and we should resist it. So I feel, you know, we should be harder. Okay, I'm a bit stirred up having been on Saturday at the anti-capitalist initiative people's thing, where there were a lot of young people there who clearly did want to fight, including young teachers, who are absolutely pissed off with the STA, I can tell you. So, you know, I feel yeah, all right, I'm old, I'm tired, I'm probably